Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Bonjour, Calvin. To answer your question, I am Jacques-Yves Cousteau. Most people know me simply as Captain Cousteau or Commander Cousteau. I spent the grand adventure of my life as a naval officer, ocean explorer, filmmaker, and a defender of our beautiful blue planet.
An absolute legend. Let's take it back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I entered this wonderful world on June 11th, 1910. I was born in a lovely little village called Saint-André-de-Cubzac, which is nestled in the beautiful Gironde region of southwestern France.
And what was your given name at birth? Is there a story behind it?
My full given name was Jacques-Yves Cousteau. There isn't an elaborate mythical story behind it. It was just a traditional classic French name, chosen by my dear parents, Daniel and Elizabeth. But it suited me well.
Nice and classic. What was your hometown like growing up, and what was your family life like?
Growing up near the water was wonderful, though my early childhood was a bit of a quiet affair. You see, as a young boy, I suffered from severe stomach problems and anemia. Because of this, my family life was quite protective. My father was a lawyer, and he and my mother did everything they could to keep me healthy. My older brother, Pierre-Antoine, and I grew up with a deep appreciation for our surroundings, even if I was a bit fragile at the start.
So, what kind of kid were you? What were your biggest fears growing up?
Despite my health struggles, I was an incredibly curious and stubborn child. At age 4, I learned to swim, and that completely changed my world. The water became my sanctuary. However, I did have a great fear of being restricted or confined. I loved freedom. I was also a bit of a mischievous boy as I grew older. In fact, by the time I was in high school, I was getting into quite a bit of trouble. I was even expelled from my high school for breaking 17 of the school's windows. My parents had to send me to a strict military-style boarding school in Paris to straighten me out.
17 windows. You were a bit of a rebel. What did you dream of becoming as a child, and what were some of your favourite activities in school?
Oh, I didn't dream of the ocean back then. I dreamed of the sky. I desperately wanted to become an aviator, a pilot. Aside from that, I had a profound fascination with mechanical objects and cinema. When I was just 11, I built a working model crane, and at 13, I built a battery-operated toy car. When I finally saved up enough money to buy my first home movie camera, do you know what I did? I immediately took it entirely apart and put it back together just to see exactly how it operated.
That makes total sense given where your life went. What was your first job?
After graduating from the French Naval Academy in 1930, my first official role was serving as a gunnery officer in the French Navy. I also worked with the Navy's information service, which gave me the incredible opportunity to travel to exotic ports of call in the Indian and South Pacific Oceans. Naturally, I brought my movie camera everywhere I went.
Was there a moment where you realised you were different from everyone else?
I don't know if I felt different from everyone else, but I certainly realized I had an obsessive drive to see what others couldn't. When I was serving on the ship Condorcet in Toulon, my dear friend Philippe Taillet lent me a pair of Fernez underwater goggles. The moment I placed them over my eyes and looked beneath the surface of the Mediterranean, my life was rewritten. I saw an entire, untouched universe right there. It was a spiritual awakening.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Borrowing my father's car in 1936. It felt like a simple, mundane choice, but it resulted in a horrific car accident. The headlights shorted out on a dark road, and I crashed violently. I nearly lost my life, and both of my arms were badly broken. The doctors actually recommended amputating one of my arms, but I flatly refused. To rebuild my strength and rehabilitate my body, I began swimming vigorously in the sea every single day. That terrible accident completely cut short my dreams of becoming a naval pilot, forcing me to redirect all my energy into the ocean. What a beautiful twist of fate.
Wow, talk about a silver lining. What was your biggest break?
My biggest breakthrough was undoubtedly the invention of the aqualung in 1943, which I co-created with a brilliant engineer named Émile Gagnon. Before our invention, diving was incredibly clumsy and dangerous, relying on heavy suits and air hoses connected to the surface. We took a valve meant for cooking gas and modified it to create the first safe, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, or scuba. It opened the gates of the underworld to all of humanity.
What were your biggest struggles before that success? Did you ever consider quitting?
Quitting? Never! But the struggles were immense, especially trying to conduct our research in secret during World War II while France was occupied. I was actually working with the French resistance, using my underwater photography as a cover to spy on enemy forces. Resources were scarce. In the early days, my first wife, Simone, who was a true partner in every sense, even sold her family jewels just so we could buy fuel for our research ship.
Simone sounds incredible. Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel were essential to your success?
Constant observation and meticulous logging. Whether I was on land or at sea, I was always writing, filming, or analyzing. But the most essential routine was simply getting into the water. No matter how stressed or bogged down I was by the logistics of funding, the sea always cleared my mind and renewed my purpose.
What job would you have had if fame never happened? What was your life like before fame?
If I hadn't become famous, I suspect I would have happily remained a quiet naval engineer or a behind-the-scenes technician. Before the television shows and international acclaim, my life was beautifully simple. We were just a tight-knit crew of passionate divers, living on a wooden, converted World War II minesweeper named Calypso, completely captivated by the mystery of the deep.
Speaking of fame, how did relationships change after your success? Did fame bring happiness?
Success is a heavy wave, Calvin. It brings immense opportunity, but it also strains your personal life. It can pull you away from the people you love because you are suddenly property of the public. Fame itself does not bring happiness. Happiness came from the fulfillment of the work, the thrill of discovery, and sharing the majesty of nature with millions of people who might never otherwise see it.
What was the downside of becoming famous? And what misconceptions did people have about you?
The downside was losing privacy. People often looked at me as this flawless, untarnished, romantic hero of the sea. They didn't see the intense financial pressures, the legal battles over ownership of our projects, or the complicated realities of my personal life. I was a human being with flaws and regrets, not just a smiling face in a red watch cap.
What was your darkest moment?
My darkest, most heartbreaking moment was losing my second son, Philippe, in 1979. He was an incredibly talented filmmaker and was supposed to carry on my legacy, but he tragically died in a flying boat crash. A piece of my heart stayed at the bottom of the sea after that.
I am so incredibly sorry for that loss. What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
In my early years of filming, such as when we made our 1956 documentary The Silent World, we used methods that I later deeply regretted, including using dynamite on a coral reef to catalog fish species and accidentally injuring a whale. We didn't know any better at the time, but as I grew older, I realized the immense damage humans were causing. I carried that regret as a mandate to spend the rest of my life fighting fiercely for ocean conservation.
It takes a big person to admit that and turn it into a lifelong mission. What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People often thought I was just an entertainer or a showman making pretty television programs. They didn't realize how much rigorous scientific observation and pioneering conservation work was happening behind the scenes. We weren't just taking pictures. We were gathering data to save ecosystems.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how you handled it.
In 1996, our beloved research vessel, the Calypso, was accidentally rammed by a barge in the port of Singapore, and it sank to the bottom. It was absolutely devastating. It felt like the end of an era. But instead of throwing up my hands, we immediately began a massive campaign to raise her from the mud, patch her up, and bring her back home to France so she could eventually be restored. You must always face the storm head on.
Did fame and fortune change your life? And what personal battles were you fighting privately?
It changed my lifestyle, certainly, allowing me to build the Cousteau Society and advise world leaders at the UN. But privately, I was always battling the clock and the exhausting financial demands of keeping our expeditions afloat. I also kept my second family hidden from the public eye for many years, which was a deeply complex personal burden until after my first wife passed away.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away on June 25th, 1997, in Paris, France. I was 87 years old, and I died of a heart attack.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My fellow pioneers, Philippe Daillet and Frédéric Dumas. Together, the three of us were known as the Mousquetaires, the underwater musketeers. We pushed each other, trusted each other with our lives in uncharted depths, and shared a vision that changed the world.
Let's pivot to some lighter, fun questions. What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
People might be surprised to know that I actually helped prove that porpoises possess a natural sonar system. I noticed them tracking our ship, the Elie Monnier, and changing directions perfectly in the dark. I wrote about it in my book, and history proved our observations right.
That is amazing. What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Oh, there were always rumors that we were fabricating our footage or that I had secret government clearance to search for Atlantis or hidden alien bases at the bottom of the ocean. I assure you, the real creatures of the deep are far more fascinating than any alien rumor.
What was your most unique habit?
Well, everyone remembers my red wool watch cap. I wore it everywhere, even when I wasn't at sea. It became my second skin and a bit of a lucky charm for me.
It's an iconic look. What was your favorite food? Did you have a favorite restaurant?
Being a Frenchman, I had a deep appreciation for fresh Mediterranean seafood, simple crusty bread, and a good glass of wine. I didn't have one specific favorite restaurant because my favorite place to eat was always on the deck of the Calypso, under the open sky, sharing a hot meal with my crew after a long day of diving.
What was your favorite book?
I always found great inspiration in the adventure tales of Jules Verne, particularly 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It fueled my childhood imagination, and looking back, it feels almost prophetic.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Not bitter rivalries, but certainly healthy competitions with other deep-sea explorers of my era, like Auguste Piccard. We all wanted to go deeper and stay under longer, but ultimately, we all shared a profound respect for the mysteries of the planet.
Tell us a story nobody talks about. What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment? Or, did you ever prank someone?
The crew of the Calypso loved a good laugh. Once, during a long and exhausting expedition, we secretly rigged a speaker inside a hollow replica of an ancient amphora jar we had brought up. When one of our newer researchers went to examine it alone in the lab, we whispered spooky, ancient sea spirit voices through the speaker. He nearly jumped right out of his skin, and the whole galley erupted in laughter. You must keep the spirit light when you are trapped on a boat for months.
That is hilarious. What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
It would have to be our first miniature jet-propelled submarine, the diving saucer Anorep 1, in 1966. Buying and building custom submarines certainly raised a few eyebrows at the bank, but it allowed us to film at depths humans had never reached.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Follow your curiosity blindly and passionately. Do not chase money or fame. Chase the thing that makes your heart beat faster. And remember, the impossible is often just something that hasn't been tried yet.
Beautifully said. Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Only that the sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever. I am so grateful to have had this joyful opportunity to share my stories with a new generation. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful show, Calvin. Keep exploring and protect our oceans.
Thank you so much, Captain. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.